All right, welcome back to the deep dive.
Good to be here.
Today we're going to jump into some really complex stuff. Fascinating territory, actually. We're talking about potential shifts, maybe big shifts in American politics and economics.
Yeah, the landscape seems primed for, well, for something.
Exactly. And we're pulling from this unique analytical series our sources call the Barackface series. It's this deep dive into some, well, counterintuitive trends.
Right.
Specifically, we're looking at a piece called Tariffs, Poll Numbers, and the 50-Year Pendulum Swing.
Quite a title.
It is. And another one titled, Trump as a Stress Test for American Democracy and Capitalism. Also provocative.
Definitely sets a certain tone. Stress test, yeah.
So our mission today really is to kind of map out the connections these sources are making.
Okay.
We want to unpack how, specific economic policies, things that might seem pretty straightforward, like tariffs, could actually set off this whole chain reaction.
Yeah, cascade.
A cascade of political events. Events that, and this is the big part, could potentially lead to a really profound, long-term redefinition of American society.
It sounds like they're arguing for some pretty significant consequences from seemingly initial steps.
That's exactly it. Think of this as like your shortcut to understanding these cutting-edge ideas. We want to pull out the key nuggets, the surprising facts, the connections you might miss.
So the listener gets sort of the distilled essence.
Yeah, exactly. A shortcut to being genuinely well-informed on these potential seismic shifts. Not just the headlines, but the deep currents.
Got it. So mapping the ripple effect.
Precisely. So how are we going to tackle this? Our path today is kind of structured like that ripple effect you mentioned.
Sense.
We'll start right at the center, the immediate economic thing. Tariffs.
The trigger point, maybe?
Could be. Then we trace the waves outward politically. How do they hit poll numbers? What does it do to internal party dynamics?
Right, the immediate fallout.
Then we pivot. We look at what's happening or what the sources see happening inside the Democratic Party. The ideological currents there.
A reaction or a parallel development?
Both, perhaps. We'll unpack their vision, their policy ideas for economic fairness, some really concrete examples.
Okay.
And finally, we zoom out. How could all these forces, the economic pressure, the political reaction, the emerging ideology, how could they combine into this huge 50-year pendulum swing?
Wow, 50 years. That's a bold claim.
It is a swing that could reshape the American landscape. It's kind of like looking for that small stone that starts the avalanche,
And that interconnectedness, I think, is really the striking part here, right?
You think so?
Yeah. I mean, how these seemingly separate things, the trad policy, approval ratings that feel like, daily noise, historical tax rates that seem kind of academic.
Things you wouldn't normally link together.
Exactly. But the sources weave them into this surprisingly coherent story, almost predictive in a way. It's not just about looking at one piece of data here, another there. It's about how they interact, how pulling one lever, maybe unexpectedly, pulls another.
Like dominoes.
Yeah, like a domino effect across the whole system, political and economic. We're trying to connect those dots, show that bigger picture.
A picture that might genuinely surprise you, I guess.
I think so. In its scope, its implications for where the U.S. might be heading, it's definitely multifaceted, forces you to think beyond just the next news cycle.
Okay, well, let's dive right in then. Let's start with that foundation, that first domino, tariffs.
Right.
Our source makes this incredibly assertive claim, like really definitive language you don't often hear in economics.
Okay.
It just states, tariffs will lead to price increases, like clockwork.
Wow. No hedging there.
None. And, economists, right, they usually live in the land of, on the one hand, but on the other hand.
Absolutely. Qualifications are their bread and butter.
Here, the source points to a rare consensus among them. It says they're almost unanimous. Tariffs hurt consumers.
Almost unanimous. That is rare.
It really is. And the source adds, that rare consensus should tell you something. It's like, wake up, this isn't a debate.
Yeah, it's presented almost like a law of physics. I think the source even uses an analogy, right? Something about gravity.
That's it. Arguing tariffs won't raise prices is like arguing against gravity. Pretty blunt.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it's maybe useful to quickly unpack why that mechanism is so certain, even if it seems obvious. It's not some complex, diffuse effect.
Right. It's direct.
It's a tax on imported goods. And that cost has to go somewhere.
It doesn't just vanish.
No. The importers pay the tax, their costs go up. So to keep their margins, what do? They raise prices on the retailers.
Okay.
And the retailers. They're not going to absorb that entire cost either. They pass it along to
us. the consumers.
Exactly. So whether it's your car, your phone, your clothes, even, stuff in your groceries, those prices go up.
So it's not abstract. It hits your wallet directly.
Yeah. Directly. It impacts your household budget, your spending power. It's tangible. The certainty here isn't just academic theory. The source treats it as, like, economic law, foundational for everything that follows.
Okay, so if that's the economic law, like gravity,
Yeah.
tariffs mean higher prices, period.
Seems to be the source's position, yeah. Like clockwork.
Then the next logical step, the political consequence, should be just as predictable, right?
You'd think so. Or at least that's the argument being made.
And the source connects it immediately to the president, says price increases will lead to lower poll numbers for Donald Trump. Like clockwork. Same phrase.
Okay, so linking economic pain directly to political pain for the incumbent.
Directly. And then it gets really specific. It mentions the threshold. Numbers in the low 30s would be politically devastating.
Low 30s. Wow, that's really low territory for a president.
It is. Not just a dip, but like sustained bad numbers. Why is that specific range, the low 30s, considered so devastating?
Well, historically, when a president's approval sinks that low and stays there, it signals a really deep, widespread loss of public confidence.
Okay.
It goes beyond just disagreeing with policy. It often means even their own base might be eroding, or at least significant chunks of independent voters are just gone.
And that makes it hard to govern.
Incredibly hard. You can't rally support in Congress easily, even from your own party sometimes. Your political capital is just drained.
And that leads to the next point the source makes about party loyalty.
Right. The calculation changes for other politicians in the president's party.
The source says, at those low numbers, many members of Trump's own party in Congress may decide it's better to abandon ship than go down with it.
Exactly. It's the harsh reality of political survival. If the president is dragging the party down significantly, especially heading into midterms or their own reelection.
Their coattails disappear.
Or
become anchors.
Precisely. So individual senators, representatives, they have to look at their own districts, their own states, and ask, is sticking with this president helping me or hurting me?
A tough calculation. Loyalty versus survival.
And when numbers hit the low 30s, that calculation often tips towards survival. You might see more public disagreement, less willingness to defend the president, maybe even support for primary challenges down the line.
Which connects back to that other source title, right? Trump as a stress test.
Exactly. This is the stress test. How much pressure can this system, can party loyalty take before things start to fracture? The economic pressure from tariffs leading to low polls directly tests that political cohesion.
And this stress test, it plays out very directly in elections, especially midterm.
Oh, absolutely. Midterms are often a referendum on the president.
And the source reminds us of that historical pattern. It's almost like a rule. The party in the White House almost always loses midterm elections without even trying.
It's a very strong historical trend, yeah. The opposition is usually more energized, and voters often want to send a message, apply a check on the president's power.
But here's the twist the source points out, the contrast. But this administration, it's trying hard to argue against the economic reality of tariffs.
So they're not just passively accepting the historical gravity, they're actively pushing back against the premise that tariffs will hurt and therefore drag them down.
Exactly. They're arguing against gravity, to use that earlier analogy.
Okay. And does the source project specific outcomes based on this, like for Congress?
It does. Very specific. It says, if the president's approval does sink into those low 30s, the House is gone for the Republicans, just flat out.
One gone. That's stark. Why the House specifically?
Well, the source points to the dynamics. All 435 seats are up every 2 years. It makes the House much more sensitive to national mood swings, right?
Right. Much more reflective of the immediate political climate compared to the Senate. A bad national environment for the president's party can easily translate into losing dozens of House seats. Enough to flip control.
So the House is seen as very vulnerable if those numbers drop that low.
Makes sense. But what about the Senate?
The Senate is trickier, according to the source.
Trickier how?
It points to a structural, almost operating system level advantage that keeps the chamber locked in a white conservative grip.
Okay, operating system level. That's interesting phrasing. What does that mean structurally?
Well, a few things, right? You've got equal representation. Wyoming gets 2 senators. California gets 2 senators. That gives disproportionate power to smaller, often more rural, more conservative states.
Right, the population imbalance.
Then there's the staggered elections. Only a third of the Senate is up for grabs every 2 years.
So a wave election doesn't necessarily sweep the whole chamber. It takes multiple cycles.
Exactly. And the 6-year terms give senators a bit more insulation from immediate public anger compared to House members.
Okay, so those factors combined make the Senate harder to flip even if the president is unpopular. It's less sensitive to short-term swings.
That seems to be the argument. That structure provides a kind of buffer.
But does the source leave it there, just saying the Senate is safe for Republicans?
No, and this is where it gets really interesting. It adds a big caveat. But with numbers that low, even the Senate could be in play. Never say never.
Ah, so even that structural advantage isn't absolute if the political environment gets bad enough.
Apparently not. It suggests that if approval ratings fall into truly catastrophic territory, like historically low levels,
Like Truman or Nixon depths?
maybe that kind of extreme pressure could potentially overwhelm even those structural defenses.
What would that take, though, for the Senate to flip against those odds?
It would probably need, an unprecedented level of voter anger, maybe combined with a really energized opposition, some major scandals or missteps by incumbents.
And probably the right seats being up for election that year, right? Vulnerable Republicans in swing states.
Yeah, exactly. A perfect storm, essentially. It would have to be a political earthquake to overcome that operating system bias.
It really raises a key question for you, the listener, doesn't it? How hard can an administration push against these seeming laws of economics and political gravity before something really breaks?
Yeah, where is that tipping point? Where the normal rules don't seem to apply anymore, or a new set of rules takes over.
That question of breaking points is fascinating. And if one side is under that much pressure, you have to look at the other side, right?
Right, the Democrats. What's
Yeah.
happening there?
Yeah.
Because as the source says, you don't beat something with nothing.
True. An opposition needs an alternative, a reason for voters to switch.
And this is where the source observes something interesting about the Democrats' internal dynamics. It says the centrist wing of the party seems missing in action.
Missing in action. That's a strong statement. What does that imply?
Well, if the traditional moderate wing isn't really stepping up with a compelling counter-narrative, or maybe their message isn't resonating, it creates a kind of void, doesn't it?
It does. It suggests maybe the old playbook isn't working or isn't seen as sufficient for the moment. It creates an opening, a vacuum.
A need for a different kind of leadership, maybe a bolder direction.
Could be. Nature abhors a vacuum, and so does politics, right? If one faction isn't leading, another might step in.
And the source makes a pretty clear bet on who fills that vacuum.
Oh.
My bet is that the AOC, Mamdani, Bernie Warren crowd will be the ones to raise the flag.
Ah, the progressive wing. Makes sense if the center is perceived as quiet.
Yeah, the voices pushing for more fundamental changes, especially on the economy. And the key thing the source stresses is what they bring. It says it isn't just policy, it's a vision.
Okay, that distinction is important. Policy versus vision. What's the difference in this context?
Policies are like individual proposals.
Right.
A tax credit here, a program there. A vision is bigger, more comprehensive.
Like an overarching narrative, a picture of where society should go.
Exactly. And the source uses some really heavy historical comparisons to make this point. It says, think FDR, think Reagan, now think Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Wow. Placing AOC alongside FDR and Reagan, that's a significant framing.
It is. It's suggesting this isn't just about winning the next election. It's potentially about a fundamental shift in ideology, like the New Deal as the Reagan Revolution.
So FDR offered a vision of government actively ensuring basic welfare. Reagan offered a vision of smaller government and individual liberty. What's the implied vision here for the AOC wing?
Well, it seems to be a vision centered on tackling deep systemic inequalities. Economic justice, social welfare, maybe climate action, all woven together.
A fundamental restructuring, maybe?
Yeah, the source explicitly calls it not just electoral maneuvering, it's a tectonic shift.
Tectonic shift, like the plates moving under the surface. Deep foundational change.
That's the idea. It's about changing the underlying assumptions, the goals of society, not just tinkering around the edges. It's offering a whole new blueprint.
A blueprint that aims to inspire people, redefine what's politically possible, maybe.
I think that's exactly it. Moving beyond just reacting, and instead proposing a fundamentally different way forward.
Okay, so if they're offering this grand vision, what does it look like in practice? What are the concrete policy ideas?
The source gives a really interesting, tangible example. It says, picture Vienna-style social housing in America.
Vienna-style social housing. Okay, tell me more about that. What is it, and why use that specific example?
Well, Vienna has this long-standing, very successful system of public or heavily subsidized housing. It's high quality, integrated into the city, and available to a huge portion of the population, not just the very poor.
So not like the often stigmatized public housing projects we might think of in the U.S.
Exactly. It's presented as a desirable, stable, affordable option for middle-income people, too. And the source makes a key argument about it,
Which is?
that it's a system proven to be more cost-effective than the billions the U.S. already spends on tax breaks for the wealthy.
Ah, so framing it not just as social good, but as fiscally smart. That's clever.
It is. It shifts the debate. It's about the arithmetic, as the source puts it.
The arithmetic. Meaning, if you actually run the numbers, this public model might save money compared to current approaches.
That seems to be the implication.
Yeah.
If you compare the long-term costs of homelessness, housing instability, healthcare issues related to poor housing.
Versus the investment in stable, quality, affordable public housing.
Right. Plus, comparing it to things like the mortgage interest deduction or other tax breaks that disproportionately benefit wealthier homeowners. The argument is the public model could be cheaper overall.
That's a powerful argument, especially in the U.S. context where government spending is often viewed skeptically. Showing it's more efficient is key.
Absolutely.
Wow.
It could potentially reframe how people think about social services, not just as charity, but as smart, efficient public investments. A paradigm shift, maybe?
A shift away from purely market-based solutions towards public goods, justified by cost effectiveness.
And the source suggests this model isn't just for housing.
Oh. It could be applied elsewhere.
Yeah, it claims that once the public sees the financial benefits, the positive arithmetic, they'll buy into similar models across major sectors: healthcare, education, infrastructure.
Wow. So extending that public, cost-effective approach system-wide.
That's the idea. Imagine universal healthcare framed not just as a right, but as more economically efficient than our current complex, expensive system.
Or high-quality, debt-free public education seen as a better investment than dealing with the drag of massive student loan debt.
Or robust public transit and green infrastructure as more cost-effective in the long run than relying solely on private cars and fossil fuels.
That would be truly transformative, a fundamental reorientation of society's priorities and of how we deliver essential services.
Moving away from privatization towards public provision, justified by efficiency and equity.
And it all ties back to that vision you mentioned. These policies aren't isolated. They weave together into that larger narrative of a fairer, more efficient society run for the public good.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But how do you pay for all this? That's the elephant in the room, right?
Always is. Does the source address funding?
It does.
No.
Directly
Ugh.
and boldly. It says the math points to a top tax rate of around 70% for the wealthiest Americans.
70%. Okay, that will definitely get people's attention.
For sure. It sounds radical in today's climate, doesn't it?
It does. The immediate reaction for many would be socialism, or that'll kill the economy.
Right. But the source immediately counters that with historical context.
Which is?
It reminds us this is far from unprecedented. During the Cold War, the U.S. thrived as a capitalist democracy with a 90% top rate.
90%. That's crucial context. So the U.S. economy didn't collapse under a 90% top marginal rate back then?
Apparently not.
Yeah.
The source frames that era, post-war boom, rise of the middle class, highways, space race as a period of thriving capitalism with very high top tax rates.
That directly challenges the modern assumption that high taxes on the rich automatically stifle growth, doesn't it?
Completely. It suggests we've maybe forgotten our own history or accepted a narrative that isn't necessarily borne out by past experience.
And it forces you to question the labels, too. The source asks that provocative question.
Yeah. If 70% is socialism, then perhaps it's time to revisit what's actually wrong with that.
Which isn't necessarily saying, let's be socialist, right? It's more like, let's examine the policy on its merits and historical context, not just react emotionally to a label.
Exactly. Let's look at the actual outcomes. Can a capitalist democracy function, even thrive, with rates like that? History seems to suggest yes.
It prompts a critical look at how terms are used and whether they accurately describe the policy or just shut down debate.
Okay, so we've got the economic trigger, tariffs, the political fallout, polls, party stress, the emergence of a new vision and policies, Vienna housing, 70% tax.
A whole chain reaction laid out.
Now, let's look at the end game presented by the source, the big picture, that 50-year pendulum swing. How does it imagine this actually unfolding?
Does it lay out a specific political scenario?
It does. A hypothetical, but a detailed one.
Yeah.
It says, now imagine a scenario where the AOC wing takes over the Democratic Party, wins the House in 2026, and almost wins the Senate.
Okay, so Democrats control the House with a progressive mandate, but the Senate is still blocked or very narrowly divided.
Right. And then for the next 2 years, the House would pass bill after bill housing, healthcare, climate, only to be stonewalled in the Senate.
Ah, legislative gridlock. But maybe weaponized gridlock?
Explain that. What do you mean weaponized?
Well, the source suggests this isn't just frustrating, it's strategically useful for the progressives. That frustration doesn't just fade away.
No, it says that frustration wouldn't dissipate. It would fuel momentum for AOC in 2028 and perhaps a blue Senate to match.
Exactly. It becomes the campaign message for 2028. Look at all the things we tried to do for you, popular things that got blocked by the Senate. Give us the Senate and we'll actually deliver.
So the blockage itself becomes proof of the need for more power.
Precisely. It clarifies the stakes. It gives voters a clear villain, the obstructionist Senate, and a clear goal. Break the deadlock. It can be incredibly motivating.
It turns gridlock from a sign of failure into a source of energy for the next election.
Yeah.
That's quite the political judo move.
It can be. Instead of voters getting cynical and tuning out, they get angry and mobilized because they see tangible solutions being deliberately thwarted.
Okay, so that frustration fuels a potential breakthrough in 2028, maybe the presidency and the Senate.
That seems to be the scenario.
And that moment, according to the source, would mark the beginning of a new 50-year pendulum swing in American politics.
Beginning. So not the end point, but the start of a whole new era.
Yeah, generational shift. And what defines this new era? What's the core focus?
Does it say?
It does. It's a swing where the richest country in the world finally confronts the absurd reality of homelessness, poverty, malnutrition, and crushing student debt.
Okay, so elevating those specific issues, basic economic security, well-being, opportunity, to the absolute center of the political agenda.
That seems to be it. Moving them from the sidelines, from issues dealt with by underfunded programs, to core national priorities demanding systemic solutions.
That would be a fundamental shift in how America defines itself and its responsibilities, wouldn't it? Treating poverty or student debt not as individual problems, but as societal failures to be fixed through policy.
It implies a redefinition of the social contract, maybe?
And the ultimate goal, the source puts it very powerfully.
Which part?
It says it's a swing where economic fairness isn't just rhetoric, it's law.
Ah, rhetoric versus law. That's a huge difference.
Massive. Rhetoric is talk, aspirations, campaign slogans. Law is binding, enforceable. It changes structures, allocates resources, defines rights.
So moving from talking about economic fairness to actually legislating it, codifying it.
Exactly. Making things like healthcare access, affordable housing, quality education, maybe worker protections, not just things we hope for, but legally guaranteed realities funded through things like that progressive tax system.
That would fundamentally change the distribution of power and resources in the country.
Absolutely. It's aiming for a society where economic justice isn't just an ideal, but a baseline requirement embedded in the legal framework, a true redefinition of American justice to fully include the economic dimension.
Which brings us right back around to the beginning, doesn't it?
How so?
The source ties it all together, stating, tariffs might be the trigger, but the transformation would go far beyond trade.
Ah, right. The tariffs aren't the main point of the new era. They're just the initial spark, the catalyst.
Exactly. They set the whole chain reaction in motion.
And that's where it gets really, really mind-bending, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The idea that one policy tariff, something seemingly narrow, maybe even intended to preserve a certain economic order, could inadvertently unleash this massive wave of change, leading in a completely different direction.
The small stone starting the avalanche?
Yeah, you trace it. Tariffs, price hikes, low polls, congressional shifts, opening for a new vision, bold policies, fundamental 50-year reorientation towards economic fairness as law.
It's an incredible narrative arc the source lays out.
It really is. It paints a picture of potentially America's next political era, triggered by something almost mundane, rippling outwards to reshape the nation's core identity and priorities. It shows how interconnected everything is.
Wow. Okay, that was quite a journey through these sources, a real deep dive.
Definitely covered a lot of ground.
We went from the very immediate, kind of predictable effects of tariffs hitting poll numbers, making Congress, especially the House, vulnerable.
And maybe even the Senate, despite its structural advantages.
Right. Then we saw how that pressure could create a vacuum within the Democratic Party, allowing this progressive vision to emerge.
A vision with concrete, historically grounded ideas like Vienna housing and that 70% top tax rate backed by arithmetic and precedent.
And then tying it all together into this potential 50-year pendulum swing, focused squarely on embedding economic fairness into law, not just leaving it as talk.
And I think the real value here is seeing those connections laid out, right? How economics, politics, ideology, and policy can interact in these powerful, maybe unexpected ways.
Understanding that chain reaction gives you a different lens for looking at current events, maybe.
I think so. It helps you think about the potential trajectory, the underlying forces. Knowledge isn't just knowing facts, it's seeing the patterns, understanding the potential consequences. It helps you anticipate, not just react.
Okay, so let's leave our listeners with a final thought to mull over, building on all this.
Right.
Given everything we've discussed, the historical precedents, the economic arguments, the political dynamics, could it be that the very policies designed to, say, protect an existing order, like tariffs, might actually end up being the catalyst for the exact kind of radical change they were trying to prevent?
The unintended consequences potentially leading to the opposite outcome.
Yeah. And what really stands out to you listening right now about this whole idea of a 50-year pendulum swing? Could a strong push in one direction really build a momentum for an equally strong or even stronger swing back the other way?
Food for thought, definitely.
Keep pondering those questions. Keep applying that critical thinking as you watch things unfold. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
We'll be back soon with more.